The region called East Asia includes China, Mongolia, North Korea, South Korea, and Japan. East Asia is the location of the continent's longest river, the Yangtze, which flows 3,900 miles eastward through southern China to the East China Sea. The region's hot and rainy summers give rise to a great variety of temperate and tropical vegetation. Here, most people live in relatively small lowland areas near rivers. Population is dense, often exceeding 1,500 persons per square mile. In China, 90% of the population is concentrated in the eastern third of the country. In Japan, most people live in the lowlands, where the large industrialized cities are located. Japan's native religion is Shinto, which has been mixed with Buddhism, a religion also practiced in North Korea, Mongolia, and Vietnam. The religion centers on the worship of ancestors and natural spirits. Kyoto, a historic city west of Tokyo, is home to more than 1,800 Shinto temples and shrines. Gion Matsuri, one of the largest festivals in Japan, began here in 869, when a plague raged throughout the city. To try to stop the plague's destruction, a priest led a procession through Kyoto to appease the Shinto gods. The plague soon ended, and over time the event became a popular festival. During the month of July, musicians play centuries-old songs, and street fairs abound with games and parades. Some of the elaborate parade floats weigh more than 10 tons, and they're often decorated with intricate tapestries from the 15th century. The floats are pulled by festival goers dressed in yukata, lightweight summer kimonos. In Japan, as in the rest of East Asia, people enjoy celebrating the traditions of their history.
The People's Republic of China is located in East Asia and is slightly smaller than the United States. It is bordered by Russia, North Korea, Mongolia, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, and the Yellow, East China, and South China Seas.
People generally don't think of China as a desert country, but China's deserts are now some of the biggest in the world. Today, China's deserts cover well over 1 million square miles.
But it wasn't always this way. China's deserts are getting bigger because of desertification. Desertification is when land loses its ability to support life.
The groundwater dries up, the topsoil turns salty, and most of the plant life dies. All that's left is unusable desert. People cutting down trees and overgrazing their livestock are the main causes of desertification in China. Trees and vegetation protect the soil from erosion by wind and rain. At one time, forests covered half of China, but now, trees cover less than 1/10. With fewer trees, more topsoil gets blown or washed away, creating more desert. As the land around China's existing deserts gets turned into new desert, places like the Gobi Desert in the north of the country are expanding. Every year, over 2,000 square miles of China turns to desert. China has the largest population in the world. Its 1.3 billion people need a lot of farmland to grow enough food to feed everyone. But there's now twice as much desert land as farmland in China. The Chinese government started seriously fighting desertification in the 1970s by reclaiming the land. It's a difficult and slow process. Trees have to be planted on thousands of acres of desert. The trees grow into natural barriers that cut down the blasting winds that erode the soil. The government hopes to plant 2.8 thousand miles of trees across the northwest rim of China, forming a Great Green Wall to stop the spread of the Gobi Desert. Some people from small villages and farms are also fighting back against the desert, replanting the areas around the villages, 1 acre at a time. The problem is immense, but today, the people of China are beginning to take charge.
Japan is made up of many small islands. The country has 4 main islands: Hokkaido in the north, Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu in the south. All 4 islands separate the Pacific Ocean and the Sea of Japan. Korea is one of Japan's closest neighbors. From about 1200 to 1700, Japan was a feudal society. Feudalism is a system of government in which less powerful people promise loyalty to more powerful ones. Japan's emperor presided over a splendid court at Heian, but the real power lay in the hands of a supreme military commander called a shogun. To expand his control, the shogun gave large parcels of land to lesser warlords called daimyo in return for their agreement to support the shogun with their armies in times of need. The armies were composed of great warriors called samurai. In return for their unswerving loyalty, the daimyo rewarded the samurai with gifts of land. With the aid of the samurai, the daimyo became more powerful than the shogun and were able to control Japan for more than 400 years. Samurai were known for their great skill with the sword. Their swords sliced swiftly and precisely, making the samurai a deadly opponent. The samurai's sword was said to have a personality of its own. Some were good and some bad. But whether it was good or evil, the sword had to be hard enough to hold a sharp edge and flexible enough to absorb blows without breaking. Japanese sword makers were among the first to solve this problem, creating a blade that was both sharp and resilient. And they did it more than 800 years ago. The samurai were known not only for the advanced technology of their swords, they were feared for their ability to use them. Like a chess player, the samurai always thought several moves ahead. A samurai learned many combinations of moves and trained relentlessly until his strokes became second nature and his mind, body, and sword moved as one. Razor-sharp, flexible swords weren't the samurai's only innovation. While Europeans made armor from metal, samurai used a flexible material woven from leather, iron, bamboo, and silk. These small plates made of tough rawhide were the building blocks of the armor. The armor maker cut holes for stitching and smoothed each plate before joining them together in a flexible panel. These overlapping panels helped cushion a sword's blow. And because they were flexible, they bent with the blade's impact, which made it difficult for the opponent to do any damage. The introduction of guns and gunpowder in the mid-1500s changed the samurai's way of life forever. In the mid-1500s, a samurai warlord bought a new weapon from Portuguese traders, and the Japanese were soon making guns in large numbers. Warlords began fighting each other with armies of tens of thousands of warriors, including gunners. To protect their masters against these new weapons, the samurai built large, strong castles throughout Japan. In the early 1600s, the age of samurai warfare finally came to an end. With the help of the gun, one warlord, Tokugawa Ieyasu, defeated all his rivals. The Tokugawa shoguns brought an era of peace and stability to Japan, and the skills of the samurai were no longer needed. Though the samurai are gone, people who are interested in their legendary skills are still learning more about these warriors today.
North and South Korea are East Asian countries that occupy the Korean peninsula. They are bordered by the Sea of Japan, the Korea Strait, the Yellow Sea, China, and Russia. Together, they are about the size of Mississippi and Indiana combined. South Korean factories make computers, televisions, and cars for sale around the world. Carefully planned industrial growth and trading with other countries has helped make South Korea prosperous, but this country was not always as successful as it is today. North Korea and South Korea were separated into communist and non-communist countries after World War II. The North Korean communists wanted to take control of the whole Korean peninsula, but the South Korean government did not want to become part of a communist country. South Korea was invaded by communists from North Korea in 1950. With help from the United States, South Korea was able to stay free. The North Korean army was sent back to the north, but many of South Korea's farms, fisheries, and mines were destroyed in the war. The United States gave money to South Korea and helped rebuild the country after the war. The government used the money to build factories that could produce heavy machinery as well as cars and electronics. The goods made in South Korean factories were sold around the world, and this trade made South Korea one of the richest countries in Asia. But North Korean factories have not been as productive as those of its neighbor to the south. Today, North Koreans have a much lower standard of living than South Koreans. North Korean factories used to produce iron, steel, and chemicals for sale to other communist countries. But when the former Soviet Union and East Germany abandoned communism, North Korea's government lost these trading partners. As a result, North Korea is one of the poorest countries in the world. North Korea receives donations of food from around the world because it is so poor. These donations are extremely important because they are helping many people in this Asian country survive. North Korea and South Korea are very different countries. One is a communist government and the other is a democracy. But despite differences in their governments, people living in the North and South are still Koreans. There are people in both countries who hope that the differences between North Korea and South Korea are not great enough to keep the two countries apart forever.